What up, nation? Welcome to the NFL DFS Week 4 First Look Lineup. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And once again, you'll be discussing this slate for the first, at least for me, for the first time. I've talked about it on the White Steak Nation podcast from a betting perspective. This is our first time looking at the slate from a DFS perspective. Took a sneak peek, saw a couple things that I thought stood out. But this will be the first true first look walkthrough, if you will. Quick disclosure, this lineup is it's Tuesday morning, 9:13 a.m. Eastern. And so this lineup, wouldn't recommend using it. This is, again, just a first look. Probably going to have a lot of chalk in here. I'm sure some of the things that stand out to us in our first look is going to stand out to the rest of the field on the first look. A lot of the stuff. Not everything, but a lot of the stuff. So if you do use this lineup, use it at your own risk. But what you should really do is come check out my team at wisetake.com. You can follow WiseTake on Twitter at wise_take. That is where me and some of my boys in the industry really break down slates together. We teach you how to play the game of daily fantasy sports, teach you how to become a better player, teach you strategy, in addition to giving you plays each week or each slate, because we also cover basketball, baseball. We got hockey, which is starting soon. We've got a lot of different sports coming up. So yeah, make sure you check us out at wisestake.com and look at the available packages. Going back to where we were, I guess. Right? I gotta fix this for week 4. For week 4's main slate. There we go. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump in this. We'll start with quarterback. There's going to be a few plays that are really, really chalky this week. It just already stands out. Monday Night Football did not help the case of one player, but there's 3 dudes who I think, maybe even 4, who I think are going to be just crazy popular this week. And one of them is at the quarterback position. We'll get to him. We'll use him in our dummies. Some of you probably already know who he is. But just going through the list, you got Pat Mahomes against Detroit, which is, that's going to be you can do that pretty much every slate. And I don't think anybody can really criticize that. I mean, Jacksonville, they won comfortably, still threw the ball 33 times. Oakland won comfortably, still threw the ball 44 times. Baltimore, 37. Dude is just super efficient, throwing the ball down the field. 300 yards is almost guaranteed at this point. 378, 443, 374. I'll never tell you not to play Mahomes, and I think you should have a Mahomes share every single week, especially this week going into Detroit, and in the dome and whatnot. So yeah, Mahomes, check. Lamar Jackson, this is probably a good bounce back spot. I do think Cleveland's defense is decent. They got a good pass rush, but I do think if the pass rush does get Miles, Jack or some of these other guys do break through, Lamar Jackson's just going to run. And we saw against Kansas City, 8 rushes for 46 yards, got a rushing touchdown, which really helped because on a passing perspective, he didn't do that great. Passer rating was 70.6, completed 51% of his passes, a significant drop-off from his previous 2 weeks of 85 to 64. Granted, he played defenses that were even worse than Kansas City, but no passing touchdowns, just was really inefficient down the field. That was a road game. This time he's at home against Cleveland. I anticipate he's going to run. I expect him to throw better. Also a fine option. Brady is Brady. It's Buffalo. Good defense. Should be a pretty good game to watch. Right? Buffalo's been impressive. They're not quite there, but they're probably in the position to give the Patriots the most difficult time that they've had so far. The Patriots have had an easy coast. Pittsburgh obviously is not looking very good this year. They destroyed them. Then they played Miami and the Jets, who didn't have Sam Darnold. It's really easy. But Brady's been consistently putting up 20s. Just consistently doing dirties. They beat the Jets pretty handily, still put up 42. Still attempted 42 passes, I should say. Deshaun Watson, another one, man, going to go really low owned against Carolina's defense, which hasn't looked overly impressive. And Watson's looked pretty good. Against Jacksonville, a really good defense was the only time he was really shut down. And you can see against the Chargers recently, 3 touchdowns, threw for over 300 yards. And then New Orleans, he had a great game. We saw that on national television. That was fun. Yeah, Phillip Rivers. I'm not going to talk about everyone, but there are guys. I don't think it's as deep as it was last week. maybe not even as it was the week before, because the pricing has gone up for some of these guys and the matchups aren't necessarily awesome. I think that that Giant game is really awesome. Like Daniel Jones in tournaments, Daniel Jones, Case Keenum, like that matchup looks like a sneaky shootout type. Like, and not even sneaky. I mean, I don't think it's that sneaky. We saw Washington was really going for it. Case Keenum, how much is Case Keenum this week? Let's look at this. Case Keenum is 4,900. That's tempting. Look how much this dude is throwing. I mean, granted, it hasn't been super efficient, but he's throwing a ton. I mean, the completion percentage isn't awful. Even last night against the Bears, despite the 3 picks and I think the 2 fumbles, 3 fumbles. Sorry, lost 2 of them. Not pretty numbers, but I mean, he's throwing a lot, right? And the Giants, we saw Jameis Winston just kind of came to life out of nowhere, just drop stems on him. So Case Keenum at 4,900, if you're looking for a pay down, I don't hate. And again, I do like that game. Like in tournaments, I'll probably be a little heavier on that game, at least as of now, unless something happens. There's a lot of time between now and Sunday. Daniel Jones was super impressive. 36 pass attempts, 2 throwing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Just was awesome. Smashed in his first ever NFL regular season start. So, yeah, these 2 guys for tournaments, I'm totally cool with. For this particular example, since we're looking for little things that are a little more optimal, just to kind of get everybody thinking and understanding what the chalk should be, Russell Wilson is the guy. So we could talk about Kyler Murray, we could talk about all these guys. Russell Wilson is that guy. Arizona's giving up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I think tight ends too, and maybe even wide receivers. I don't know, but their defense has been awful. Just terrible. So Russell Wilson, 6,100. He's been this price. Week 1, disappointed. Week 2, got there on the road. And then week 3, in a game where his team fell behind without Drew Brees on the Saints. The game script just kind of went to shit. Carson fumbled. He threw the ball 50 times trying to bring his team back. Is he going to throw the ball 50 times against Arizona? I don't know, right? He was trailing in that game. Hard to envision them trailing. Hard to envision anyone trailing to Arizona at this point. But what we do know is Arizona plays really fast. So regardless, Russell Wilson should have the ball in his hands a lot. And on DraftKings, you're rewarded. Well, you're not necessarily directly rewarded with volume if the guy's super inefficient. But for the most part, these constant, more opportunity typically equals more fantasy points. Or at the very least, is a higher percentage for you to get better fantasy points. So just on volume alone, the Seahawks are going to be heavily in play. Not just Wilson. Is a bunch of dudes. And I think that Russell Wilson will be the most popular quarterback this week. I should say one of, because there's going to be a lot of people who just play Mahomes every week, and I get that. But Russell Wilson should be pretty popular. We're going to use him in this example. Again, just because he seems like optimal. But again, I love Daniel Jones, and I even like Case Keenum some. And there's other quarterbacks that I liked. But it's a first look show. We're not going to sit there and talk about everybody. Moving on to running backs. Christian McCaffrey, 8-8 against Houston. Not the greatest matchup. McCaffrey, known for being a volume play. Did the dirty for us. He was in my core over in my article. If you're subscribed to Wise Take, you know that. And we were all high on him. He was chalk. There's no secret, right? He was just an optimal play, phenomenal spot. And a similar situation to Russell Wilson. We knew he was going to get the ball a ton because he was going to be paced up. And as you can see, 24 rushing attempts, which was a lot higher than he got in the first 2 weeks. Just didn't waste it. Only got 1 touchdown. That's all he needed. Broke a 76-yard touchdown run or something. Only got 4 targets in the passing game. That's worth noting. I don't know if we need him. Houston is not the greatest matchup, right? Like they played Arizona. That was a really soft match. I just don't know. Dalvin Cook has been awesome. Outside of week 1, he has not been popular. Well, no, I'm sorry. Oakland, he was kind of popular against Oakland. I'm full of shit. Sorry. But he's been awesome. He gets Chicago. In Chicago, tough defense. Some on Monday Night Football, tough defense. Probably reserved for tournaments, hoping that his ownership drops. Eckler should be the first guy that garners ownership now. What's good about Eckler is the pass game. He's just consistently involved in the pass game. 7 targets. The rushing attempts aren't always there, only 9 against Houston. But, I mean, on DraftKings, the fuck do you really care about rushing attempts? If you can get passing attempts, you'll take that all day. On top of that, they're playing Miami, a team that you expect them. They're like 16 or 17-point favorites. You expect them to be ahead in this game. You expect them to want to kill some clock at some point. So whether it's a competitive game and Eckler's just getting the pass game work, or it's a non-competitive game and Eckler and what's his name, Jackson a backup, or just used to kill the clock, I still think Eckler does make sense as one of the optimal running backs this week. 8K seems like a lot for a guy that's not getting the same amount of volume every week as some of the other ones, but again, pass game PPR site DraftKings seems pretty important. Good matchup, one of the better matchups on the board. I could rock with him. Todd Gurley is 7K. Not sure why he is still 7K. That seems a little far-fetched to me. 14 touches. I mean, it's just where is he getting those touches? He's not getting any pass game work anymore. And his red zone work has just gone down. And you can see, I mean, he's averaging 3.1, 3.9 yards a carry. It's just not pretty. 7K might be too expensive for him at this point, even against Tampa. David Johnson I do like in this game. The issue, it's hard to take David Johnson in any kind of optimal build because his team's going to be playing from behind so much. But you can see, like, when his team is competitive and trailing, they will throw to him. They threw to him seven targets against Detroit, 9 targets most recently against Carolina. Didn't do a ton. Did get in the end zone with one of those catches. The rushing attempts aren't pretty. There's not like Bruce Arians, David Johnson that we love so much pre-injury, but 6,800 against Seattle. Seattle's defense does not look good at all. We saw Kamara just do the dirty to him last week. And just in general, they haven't looked good at all. The Bengals look great against them. Haven't looked great since. So, yeah, I'm really not impressed with Seattle's defense. I think that David Johnson is definitely in play in tournaments this week at 6,800. I think one of the guys that kind of stands out to me is maybe like Marlon Mack. So this is like, he's not nearly as good as Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, I think, is a freak of an athlete. I think he's an extremely good running back. If he can stay healthy, he's going to do incredible things. He's probably one of the closest, like, athlete-wise situations that we've had to that Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson situation we had years ago before Bell held out and before DJ initially got hurt. There was a time where you had to play those guys every week. That hasn't really been. We haven't really seen that except for Dalvin Cook. But Marlon Mack, as far as the usage goes, is comparable. Not the talent, the usage, right? 25 carries week 1, 20 carries week 2, 16 carries week 3, and he should have gotten more. I think the Colts were kind of feeling themselves a little bit, and they started throwing the ball more than they should have, and they almost allowed Atlanta to come back because of that. But hats off to Jacoby Brissett. He did have a good game. But Marlon Mack, 6,100 against Oakland. Dalvin Cook just shredded these guys up. I don't think Oakland's defense is going to be very good. I mean, I don't think Oakland in general is going to be very good. I know they're the Hard Knocks team, and, people like them. But, I said it on Twitter the other day. John Gruden, man. You didn't like Marlon Mack, right? But you were going nuts for Antonio Brown. You couldn't wait to have Antonio Brown. Didn't want Marlon Mack, right? I'm saying Marlon Mack. Oh, fucking, you know what I'm talking about. Khalil Mack. Sorry. You know what I'm talking about. Khalil Mack. You didn't want Khalil Mack. Didn't want Marlon Mack. Whatever. Big deal, right? Didn't want Khalil Mack. That's a little bit of a bigger deal. But 6,100, I just don't know if I want to pay all the way up for these running backs if they're not in a good situation. McCaffrey it's not the best matchup. They don't have Cam. The game plan is going to be different. They can actually plan a little bit more for McCaffrey. I don't dislike McCaffrey. I wouldn't talk you off of him. And maybe I come on to him later in the week. You'll have to find out at wisesake.com by subscribing and checking out my GBP Notes article. But, maybe. Right now, for this example, I don't know if I need him. I think I'd rather take a shot in running back. I don't love the position so far, right? I do like David Johnson. I like some of these guys. I think if you're not playing Russell Wilson, and like in tournaments, you can still play Carson with Russell Wilson. He has gotten more pass game work, and not recently, but in week 1 we showed they will throw it to him. Threw it to him 7 times. Carson is a fumbling machine, and he's ruining people's lives because of it. So if you notice, the 2 games Russell Wilson did good, Chris Carson did not do well. And in the first game, Russell Wilson didn't do that good. Chris Carson did well. So I prefer to separate them right now. Carson is similar to Russell Wilson. It's an opportunity thing. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey last week. Opportunity thing. We have to check the status on his backup who missed last week, Penny. He fumbled again. Chris Carson fumbled again. He's fumbled in each of the first 3 games. Lost all 3 of them. Just a disaster. Pete Carroll don't play that shit. Pete Carroll will bench his ass, especially if Penny does play. So yeah, 5,700. If you're not playing Russell Wilson, go ahead and play Chris Carson and take that shot because the opportunity is going to be there. Like, Arizona is not very efficient and they play very fast. The combination leads to a lot of 3-and-outs. It leads to a lot of turnover on downs. It leads to a lot of punting. So the offense of Seattle is going to have a ton of opportunities, and that's the whole point of why we like to attack Seattle so much. So Carson, definitely viable. I'm not going to use him in this example because I have Russell Wilson, and there are already 2 other guys I want to stack Wilson with. So definitely a tournament viable option. I prefer not with Russell Wilson, but I'm not totally opposed to it either. Like if you do have a lot of that game, if you have a lot of Seattle and you want Russell Wilson with Carson, I'm not going to knock it. Derrick Henry gets Atlanta. I just don't love a guy that doesn't get any pass game work like that. I mean, it just seems like the average yards per carry have been good against Cleveland, decent against Cleveland, good against the Colts, who are not good against the run. I just don't love it. 6,300 for him. I'd rather play the Marlon Mack thing. Mack could get some pass work. Hasn't gotten a lot yet. But he's getting the rushing. He's playing Oakland. He's at home. I'm going to go with Marlon Mack, I think, for this example. A couple other guys you can consider. One is Kerryon Johnson. He got 20 carries against Philly. They're very much a pass funnel defense. Now, he didn't do very good with those carries. He only got 36 yards. Did get 1 touchdown. But we did see Mark Ingram destroy Kansas City. I think if Detroit wants to hang around this game, they're going to have to figure out how to run the ball. It was the first start for Kerryon Johnson without C.J. Anderson as his backup, and he got 20 carries. So if he gets another 20, I think in tournaments, 5,400, I think Kerryon Johnson is very much viable. I think I'll stop it there. I think we could stop it there. I mean, there's one other guy that I think could gain some traction. I don't know how I feel about it. But Wayne Gallman, we know Saquon Barkley's out. Wayne Gallman only got 5 carries. That game was kind of a shootout. I don't love this. Gallman is not Saquon, who's going to be out 4 to 8 weeks. But we've seen him serviceable enough. We have to, the matchup against Washington seems lately like you want to attack them through the air mostly. But 4,600 for a running back is pretty cheap. Just not sure how they're going to use him in the pass game. Not sure because Daniel Jones throws the ball down the field. So I'll mention his name, honorable mention type stuff, but we're not going to use him in this example. I think for now I'm going to go with my boy Marlon Mack, who was in my core last week. Didn't crush the way I wanted him to. Didn't do terrible either. He was fine. Wanted more though. Wasn't really his fault. I thought that was the Colts' offense. Like I said, they were feeling good about themselves, letting Brissett throw, and he did look good. But they almost gave the game away. Moving on to wide receivers, I think the first guy, since we have Russell Wilson in here, is going to be Tyler Lockett that we look at. I'll mention some of the other guys, but Tyler Lockett only got 2 carries against Cincinnati. Russell Wilson did not do well, right? The next 2 games, Russell Wilson did well, and Lockett did well as well. 12 as well. 12 targets week 2, 14 targets week 3 against the Saints. Caught a 40-yard long, had a touchdown. Against Pittsburgh, didn't have a touchdown, still put up 17. If he had that touchdown, would have done even better. It's hard not to want to play Lockett with Wilson. You could go with Metcalf instead, who's like the big, strong, possession-ish type of guy, and is getting 6, 7, 6 targets, right? You could easily pivot to Metcalf instead. It just seems like ceiling-wise, Lockett's got the bigger ceiling. He makes the bigger, longer, deeper plays, and he's got the report Russell Wilson, right? So Lockett is the guy we're going to go with. So we're going to plug him in there because of Wilson. Julio Jones, again, the receiver's not very priced up, even though they went off yesterday and you kind of had to pay up. Keenan Allen just went nuts last week. We have Eckler. This game has blowout potential. Not going to get too sold on Allen, but I got to just stop and acknowledge how good he's been. 29, 17, 46, all my season-long team. Still not helping, still sucking in season-long because I keep playing guys who just have better teams than me that week. That's a disaster. D-Hop, 7-7. Where are the targets going? Why is Watson not throwing a D-Hop so much? 7 targets. Jacksonville, I sort of get he had Ramsey. Sort of get that. Still think he could have won that matchup if they tried more. There's the Chargers. I mean, don't get me wrong. Chargers defense is supposed to be decent, but D-Hop, only 7 targets. Weird. Cheapest price we've seen him in a while. Maybe we could buy low-ish. Odell Beckham against Baltimore. I'm really not afraid of Baltimore's defense. I'm more afraid of Baker's efficiency issues. But 11 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets against the Rams. I'm fine with OBJ. They just haven't been on the main slate very often. They're playing Baltimore this week, division rival. Baltimore's defense not nearly as good as we're used to, right? We're used to them being a really, really good defense. That's not the case anymore, especially when Jimmy Smith is out. So I want to follow that news. I think this is a pretty good bounce back spot for Sammy Watkins. Only got 8 targets against Baltimore and only caught 5 of them. But if you look in week 1, had 11 targets against Jacksonville. That was most likely because Tyreek Hill. Number 1, Tyreek Hill got hurt. But number 2, Tyreek Hill, when he was on the field, is the one who got Ramsey. Against Oakland, it wasn't a good game, but he had 13 targets in the first game without Tyreek, and now he got 8 against Baltimore. He's still getting more targets than the other wide receivers. I think Hardman had like 5 in the last 2 games, and Robinson may have had even less. So Watkins at 6,700, I still have interest in. Against Detroit, Watkins very fast. They're going to put him in the dome on the turf. Like that deal. Get down on the hood team. Too much television watching. I'm chasing dream. Educated fool, money on my mind. You know the other deal. Anyway. Cooper Kupp, 6,500, just smashed against Tampa. Cooper Kupp is always my first Ram. Like, if I'm going to stack the Ram, I'm going to stack golf. Kupp is the first person I look at. Now, it's not like a given. You still got Woods. You got, other dickhead Cook. Sorry, I didn't mean to call him a dickhead. That just came out. But Cooper Kupp certainly viable. Could be an interesting bounce back spot for Godwin, who just was invisible last week. 4 targets, just looked awful. Against the Giants, a terrible secondary. It's just Evans was smashing so much, they just didn't need the guy. So I kind of get it. We've got Josh Gordon against Buffalo, certainly an option. No more Antonio Brown. How many targets did Gordon get? 11 targets. Not bad. 11 targets. This is a good defense, but this is still a good price for Gordon. I mean, 11 targets in the first game without Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown only played 1 game. Let's be real. But they didn't need him in week 1. He still put up a 16 on 3 receptions. They just didn't need him, right? Maybe Buffalo game's a little more tight. It's got a 7-point spread, which I think is the lowest they've had so far. Well, no, it was low against Pittsburgh. Nobody knew how bad Pittsburgh was going to be that day. But Josh Gordon's certainly viable at 5,900. There's a lot of guys to consider. Kenny Golladay was chalk last week and busted. His prices dropped pretty dramatically. Still had 8 targets. The targets are still there. Like, this range seems pretty deep right here. This 5-7 range seems pretty juicy. Kenny Golladay, 5,900 against Kansas City. You would imagine Detroit's going to be trailing. You would imagine they're going to have to be throwing the ball somewhat. I do like that. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, you fucked me so hard last week, bro, and it did not feel good. Did not feel good at all. You didn't. That sucked. But it wasn't all your fault. Some of the throws are pretty bad. 2 for 9. The targets are still there. 9 targets is pretty damn good. Now they're at home. Last time they were home, Lamar Jackson was a lot more efficient in general. Still only caught 8 targets, but when you get 13, it's whatever. So, yeah, again, another option, another viable option we have in this range. Sterling Shepard, I talked about that Giant game. I like that game. Shepard got 9 targets. Got 100 yards. Had a 36-yard long. Sure, why not Shepard? This is the tier. This is the tier where it's at. Williams didn't have a lot of targets. Did get in the end zone, though. 5,700. It's not pretty, but another viable option. Fitzgerald, right? Like Larry Fitzgerald. 7 targets last game. Got in the end zone again. Just 13, 11, 7. Doing dirty. Seattle's defense sucks. Let's fucking go. I like this, too. I do. There's options. So, like, to me, last week, the top guys paid off. They all smashed. And I was fucked because I was kind of paying up for running back with, like, the Zekes and the McCaffreys and paying down at receiver, and that wasn't the right build. This week, I get the feeling that that mid-tier is just too loaded, and I may not get to the top again. And that's scary proposition. Those guys are all playmakers. But this mid-section is loaded. We haven't even talked about like Hardman and some of these other guys who have been playing really well also. As far as like value for now, there's one guy who's going to be like super chalk, and that guy is Terry McLaurin. So number 1, he's been getting the usage. 7 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets on Monday night last night. Touchdowns in all 3 games. Look at the points. 26, 17, 19 DraftKings points. 4,500 against the Giants. Why did they lower his price against the Giants? He was more expensive according to the algorithm. This isn't the showdown slate. This is like the Thursday through Monday. He was more expensive against the Bears. They lowered his price against the Giants. We saw Mike Evans just completely destroyed this defense. Case Keenum, in my opinion, is like this year's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Last year, Ryan Fitzpatrick, if you remember on Tampa, was just taking a ton of chances. He had a lot of turnovers, a lot of days. But he also made a lot of big plays. So I'm going with McLaurin as the value guy. He'll be super chalky. This is not anything sneaky. Super, super chalky. And then I'm going to go up and just pick, since we have so much Seattle, I'm going to pick Fitzgerald on the bring back. I think there's a lot of different ways you go. Tight end, Kelsey, sure. Ingram, Absolutely, why not? Especially if you're high in that game. I'll probably have a good amount of Ingram because of Daniel Jones in that game in general. Darren Waller is now 5-2. I don't feel great about that, but the targets have been there. The production's been there. I just don't love that price. But there's one guy really, I think, like, we'll talk about these other guys as the slate goes on, but Will Dissly, 3,600. Arizona giving up a shit ton of points to tight ends. Greg Olsen was the third tight end in a row to just smash at a really low price. Dissly's only 3,600. Wilson threw to him 7 times against New Orleans, 5 times against Pittsburgh. He's gotten 3 touchdowns already. Already had an 18 out of 22 his last 2. Now you're putting him against Arizona, who's given up the most, by far, fantasy points to tight ends. So Dissly, we have like a triple stack already. Wilson, Lockett, Dissly. We got it rolling. Defenses, I'm not going to spend too much time on for this particular example. I guess hypothetically, I'm just going to pick one. I'll say Colts, even though I don't necessarily believe it. I don't think the Colts defense is great. I'll just say Colts. And that'll leave me with, in the flex, with Ingram, Thielen, Watkins. I do like Sammy Watkins. But you know what? I'm really close to David Johnson. And so I think for now, for shits and giggles, I'm going with David Johnson. And I'll just plug in a defense. We'll just fucking say the Chiefs, even though I think their defense sucks ass. Is there anybody else that's 3? I mean, that's a little bit better. Not really. I guess the Broncos, I could kind of, but the Jacksonville, I don't know. If I want to get Minshew'd, I'll just put them in there for now because I don't want to put that Chiefs team in there just yet. But, yeah, not terrible for a first-look lineup. I think we've got the triple stack to Russell Wilson. That'll be really popular. Russell Wilson and Dissly will certainly be popular. Lockett will also be in that mix of McLaurin. So Wilson, Lockett, McLaurin, Dissly, they will be the most popular plays this week, I believe. So, that's kind of where we're at. Not a terrible lineup. Actually wasn't bad. Triple stack, heavily exposed to that Seattle-Arizona game, which I like. My 2 favorite games for tournaments as of right now is that Seattle-Arizona game and the Giants-Redskins game. So maybe in tournaments I'll go a little heavier on the Giants-Redskins, maybe reserve Russell Wilson for cash, or I'll play him in tournaments too, but either way, do the dirty. But that's going to do it for me today, as a friend of ours used to say. Appreciate you guys rocking with me. Appreciate you guys watching the video. If you could do me a favor and hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell. This way you are notified whenever we do go live. We do a lot of DFS content on this channel. We do a lot of sports betting content on this channel. So if you're a fan of sports, if you're a fan of sports investing, as I like to call it, make sure you subscribe and go check us out at wisestake.com for more of that fire. Once again, my name is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013, and I represent the Wise Take Nation, which you can find at wisestake.com or at wise_take. For myself, the entire Wise Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.